Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing the CR-1 and IR-1 spouse visas and the interview for both of those visas, presumably at the U.S. Embassy here in Thailand. We're based in Thailand, so I'm going to make this kind of more Thailand specific, but we do deal with cases out of Phnom Penh, Cambodia, Wen Chien, Laos. Before the travel ban was lifted or was placed on Myanmar, we dealt with a lot of cases in Myanmar, as well as Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam. So generally speaking, Southeast Asia generally. But this video I'm going to draw upon a lot of my experience with Thailand because I've dealt with the U.S. Embassy here the most, although I have been to the U.S. Embassy in both Phnom Penh and Laos and dealt with them personally on a personal level rather frequently. Some of the other posts in the region not so frequently, mostly due to proximity, at least at physically going there. So I've been to the embassies in Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand quite a lot compared to, for example, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore. That being said, I've dealt with all these posts by correspondence rather frequently, and a lot of questions I get with regard to spouses of foreign nationals in this region that are looking to get their visa interview done and over with is, should I go to the interview too? Well, generally speaking, the answer to that is no. Your presence is not required, and I'll get into it in a minute. There's certain reasons why it's not a terribly great idea just from an efficiency standpoint to go to the interview. But also there's security protocols. One of the big ones, for example, here at the U.S. Embassy, no one but the applicant themselves for the visa can be present at the interview. Now, that being stated, there are exigent circumstances, there are extenuating circumstances that may arise wherein someone else's presence may be required, be it the American citizen. We've actually had the embassy call the American citizen applicant or petitioner in the past. I've seen them do that. I've also dealt with them myself rather frequently over the years. Now, one thing that I've seen a lot of fake lawyers out there say is, oh, nobody can go to the interview, or nobody can go to the embassy, only she can go to the embassy, or he can go to the embassy, that being the foreign applicant. This isn't true. I've dealt with the U.S. Embassy here frequently. Depending on the circumstances, I may have to go down there. Now, it's fairly rare, and it usually involves an issue of pretty intense complexity for me to actually have to physically go down there and deal with something. But it can happen. Now, it doesn't happen, like I said, overly frequently, but it can happen. So this notion that only, that everyone is barred from going down there, that's not necessarily true. Although presence of anyone else down there is not a particularly routine thing. It just doesn't happen very often. Last few weeks I was down there on a matter pending before them, and it was just kind of a weird set of circumstances where it was only me that could go down there and deal with it. And in those circumstances, but specific arrangements need to be made. For example, an appointment for the attorney record to show up to explain something in the application, usually involving grounds of inadmissibility or something. But long story short, it is rare, but it can happen. A third party, for example, the attorney, can be dealing with something at the consular level at the embassy. It doesn't happen all that often, but it can happen. That being said, the security protocols, again, preclude just anybody being down there. The applicant themselves is the only one that's going to be generally allowed to come in, again, due to security. So, should the American petitioner worry about having to show up at the interview? No. I don't think it's a good idea for them to think that they need to be at the interview. In fact, and I stated I'd get to this in a minute earlier in the video, it can also lead to what's called a Stokes interview. I've actually seen Americans being inadvertently sort of roped into a Stokes interview. This was years in the past where, for example, there was a gentleman that was petitioning for his wife, and he was going down to get his passport renewed, and they just were sort of lumping it all together, and it was all being done at the same time. And it was when the embassy was set up in a much different way than it's currently set up. It was going on, wow, sort of realizing my age here, it's going on like 8 or 9 years ago. He was in the back dealing with American Citizen Services. Some question came up during the interview, and he sort of got roped into the interview because his wife didn't exactly know the answer, and then they ended up getting roped into what's called a Stokes interview, which is basically like a prolonged interview where they get into the ins and outs of the relationship and all the details associated with the relationship. Like I said, not real conducive to just an efficient processing in and out of a visa application, but it can happen. So in theory, yeah, it may. In the past, I've seen the American citizen be there, but as a practical matter, no. It's not going to be a frequent undertaking that an American is going to be present. And in fact, security protocols dictate quite the opposite, that the American citizen should not be present at the interview for their immigrant spouse, for their spouse who is seeking an immigrant visa to the United States.